Hello and welcome to the session today. Today we are going to be looking at adding and subtracting fractions. When adding or subtracting fractions, the denominator has to be the same. Now the denominator of a fraction is the number on the bottom. So the goal is always to have the denominators the same. Example. So if we've got 1/4 plus 1/4, because the two denominators are the same, and in this case that is the 4 and the 4 because it's the number on the bottom, because those two are the same, we can simply add the two numerators together. So 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 2/4, which can be simplified to 1/2. Okay, so example 2, and we've got 3/5 add 7/8. Now we can't just add these two fractions together because the two denominators are not the same. So in this case we've got a 5 as one denominator and we've got an 8 as the other denominator, so it's not the same number. So what we've got to do is we've got to get both denominators the same. And how we do that quickly is we times the first fraction, which is 3/5, and we times top and bottom both by the denominator of the second fraction. So we times the first fraction, 3/5, by 8, and that gives us an equivalent fraction of 24/40. Next, we times the second fraction by the denominator of the first fraction, which is 5. So 7 times 5 is 35, and 8 times 5 is 40. And then we can combine the fractions because we've got the same denominator. So 24/40 plus 35/40 is 59/40, and if you want to simplify that, it will become 1/19/40. Okay, so moving on. A couple of examples. So here, 2/5 plus 1/5, because the denominator is the same, we can simply add the two numerators together. 2 plus 1 is 3, and the fifths stay the same. So the answer is 3/5. Next example. So we've got 7/9, which is our first fraction, and 3/8, which is our second fraction. So we can't just take away in this case because the two denominators are different. So what we've got to do is to times the first fraction by the denominator of the second fraction, and we times the second fraction by the denominator of the first fraction, which is 9. So 7 times 8 is 56, 9 times 8 is 72, 3 times 9 is 27, and 8 times 9 is 72. And by timesing by the opposite denominator, we always get a common denominator. So now we just take them away. So 56 take away 27 is 29, and 72, so those two are common denominators, so that just goes there. Question 3. So question 3, and I've included a mixed number here, and a mixed number is where you've got whole numbers, which is the big 3, and you've also got a fraction. So the first part would be 3 and 1/2. So the question is, find 3 and 1/2 take away 4/5. and how we change a mixed number into our improper fraction. And it's basically called an improper fraction because it's more than 1. Okay, so what we do is we say the big 3 times the denominator, which is 6. 3 times 2 is 6, and then we add on the numerator, so that makes 7 over 2. So 7 over 2 is the same as 3.5. And now we look at our fraction, and it's a takeaway, so we know that we need to get a common denominator. So now the common denominator here between 2 and 5 is 10. So we've got to times that by 5, and we've got to times the second fraction by 2. So 7 times 5 is 35, 2 times 5 is 10, 4 times 2 is 8, and 5 times 2 is 10. So now what we've got is 35, take away 8, which is 27, and we've got a common denominator, so that just gets carried over. And if you wanted to simplify that even further, it becomes 2.7. Okay, so now it's your turn to have a go at a couple. So pause the video and have a go at the following. I will then go through them. Okay, so question 1. And what we've got here is 3 tenths plus 9 tenths. So because we've got a common denominator here, we don't need to work out any equivalent fractions. So 3 plus 9 is 12, and then the 10 goes there. Next one. So we've got 6 sevenths take away 5 eighths. So what we need to do is to times the first fraction by the denominator of the second, which is 8, and we need to times the second fraction by the denominator of the first, which is 7. So 6 times 8 is 48, 7 times 8 is 56, 5 times 7 is 35, and 8 times 7 is 56. So now what we've got is the common denominator, 56, and then we take away the two numerators. So 48 take away 35 is 13, and it's over 56. Well done if you got that one correct. Next one. So what we've got here is 9 twelfths plus 7 tenths. So we need to get a common denominator, and you could have gone for 60 here because both 12 and 10 go into 60, but using our method today, I've times the first fraction by the denominator of the second fraction, which is 10, and I've times the second fraction by the denominator of the first fraction, which is 12. So times everything in the first fraction by 10, and we get 9 times 10 is 90, 12 times 10 is 120, and times everything in the second fraction by 12. So 7 times 12 is 84, 10 times 12 is 120. So again, we've got the common denominator. So now we've got 90 plus 84, and that equals 174. And then we've got a common denominator of 120, so that gets brought forward. So now we simplify, and we see, I've just divided straight by 6 because that is the highest common factor, but you can, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, etc. As long as every time that you can simplify a fraction, you do, because you get more marks for that in exams. So last question, for today's session. And what we've got is 5/5, 5.5, take away 3/5. So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to change the mixed number into an improper fraction. So how we do that is we say 5, and that's the big 5 at the beginning, times by the denominator, which is 10, and then add on the numerator. So 10 add 1 is 11, and it's 11 over 2. And that's that. If you're not sure about how to change from mixed numbers into improper fractions, there is a lesson for that, and I'll put the link up as soon as possible. Or just get in contact with us through the link on the description. Okay, so now 3/5, and we only really do one step at a time in mathematics to keep it logical, so we just bring the negative 3/5 down. So now we need to get a common denominator, and again the common denominator between 2 and 5 is 10, so we've got to times the first fraction, 11 over 2, we've got to times that by the denominator of the second fraction. Next one, 5, and we times 3/5, and we times that by the denominator of the first fraction, which is times 2. So 11 times 5, 55, 2 times 5 is 10, 3 times 2 is 6, and 5 times 2 is 10. So now what we've got is 55 over 10, take away 6 over 10, which equals 49 over 10. And that can be simplified as 4.9. So well done if you managed to get all of them correct. So that is our lesson on addition and subtraction of fractions. If you have any questions, then please click on the link in the description, send us a question, and we are happy to help. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.